I was rotating to stream in landscape, which actually does look a little bit better. So I'm following YouTube's suggestion, and now I'm talking to the camera. Hi, I'm Catherine Best Gordon, the author of Sugar Freedom. In the Sugar Freedom Kitchen, today I'm going to make Spanish cauliflower. I like to say I create simple food for a wonderful life, and this is a simple recipe that I hope that you'll find easy and tasty and delicious. I'm 53 going on 44. Ha, that's fun. 53 going on 54. And I do find that as each year passes, I want to eat more simply, which keeps me nourished and satisfied and keeps me away from cravings and trigger foods. So I am basically eating a lot of protein, healthy fats, and vegetables. You choose your protein, whether I do eat animal foods, so it can be conventional, vegetarian, or vegan. What I do find, and I am a certified personal trainer, is that we establish a baseline of protein. Get adequate protein. I do lift weights as well to maintain muscle. And what I find is working is around a gram of protein per pound of preferred ideal body weight, maybe a little bit less than that. Actually, that's kind of high. So I'm looking at probably around 100 grams of protein a day when I'm lifting heavy. Normally about 80 is gonna do it for me. Let me grab my sweet peppers. So once again, as I said, protein, healthy fats, and vegetables. Usually vegetables that grow above the ground are the bulk of my nutrition. I cook for my family as well. My husband and my son are not sugar addicts, so they can eat sugar and grains. So what I do for them is I make the protein and the healthy fat and the vegetables, and then they can add grains and sweets as they desire. So the main part of this recipe is cauliflower, and not the whole head, because heads are getting real big these days. It's about half a head of cauliflower. These are the small mini sweet peppers and onion. So those are the three vegetables that are going in the recipe. Cauliflower, the small sweet bell peppers, and onion. And then some olive oil. And then in order to make it Spanish, while still keeping it simple, everything's over here. We have the magic ingredients. The basic three for the Spanish flavor is going to be about a teaspoon, half teaspoon to a teaspoon of garlic powder, half teaspoon to teaspoon of paprika, and a teaspoon, this is thyme. I don't need thyme. I get the thyme out for. I need cumin. Don't they? There it is. And that's coriander. And here's the cumin. So those are the three: paprika, garlic powder, and cumin. Salt to taste. And I'm also going to add some turmeric, ground turmeric, to give it even more of a bright orange Spanish color. So while I chop and while I prepare this, I'll talk about some of the motivational ideas to stick to a sugar-free lifestyle and do some resistance training, weightlifting, in order to, as you release fat, maintain muscle and not fall into what we call the weight loss trap, which is as we get lighter and we lose muscle, we require less nutrition to maintain our bodies, and sometimes we put the fat back on because we're getting smaller and smaller, but we're still eating the same amount of food. If we continue to lift weights, a lot of times we can preserve that minimum amount of nutrition that we need daily, and it'll allow us a little bit more freedom in how much food we're able to eat. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the cauliflower. And I just kind of slice it, have a good knife, a good sharp knife, and I just slice it down so that the pieces aren't too large. And this is going to allow it to cook nice and fast. I've got my oven preheated to 400 degrees. And I just chop and slide it in there. So you're going to preheat your oven, if you're in the United States, to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And you're gonna cook it about 10 minutes, and then you're gonna stir it, and then you're gonna cook it about 5 minutes more. We don't wanna just cook it to death and make it mushy. We want it just the right amount. kind of like al dente vegetables. If you want it cooked a little bit more, of course, you can cook it more. If you want it a little bit more crunchy, you can cook it a little bit less. And so you'll see that I'm not going to use the whole head of cauliflower. I already had made this recipe earlier in the week just for myself. And chop it up. And you could chop it to the point where the consistency, make it as small as rice if you wanted to. I don't really think that's necessary. I'm just gonna chop it up a little smaller than bite-sized pieces. There we go. I'm not a fancy cook. I'm not a fancy chef. I like substantial, tasty meals, which means I have to be cautious about the ingredients that I put in. I want my food to be tasty, but not irresistible. I find that if the food I'm cooking is irresistible, I'll eat it all. And I don't want to eat it all. I just want to eat the appropriate amount to get nourished and satisfied and to enjoy a tasty meal, but then to get on with my life. Pardon the cliche, but I do eat to live as opposed to living to eat, and it makes a big difference. All right, so removing the seeds, not being fussy about it. That's one of the things. I am not a fussy chef. If a tiny little seed from my bell pepper gets caught up in the rest of the recipe, I am not gonna freak out about it. And so I'm just removing the seeds and setting them aside on the counter. And I can just clean and wipe down the counter afterwards. I notice a lot of people who are wonderful chefs and cooks, they do tend to be very pristine and very organized, and it would be lovely if that was me, but it just isn't. I just need to get the job done and get going. One of the reasons why is the central part of my life, and look, I'll just be honest about it, yes, God, family theater. I love my family and I love to work in the theater. So I act and I sing and I dance. And that is what I like to stay busy with. So when I am cooking and when I'm blogging and when I'm doing YouTube Live, I'm doing it because, of course, I want to serve my Sugar Freedom readers and my personal training clients. But the truth of the matter is that I got into nutrition and personal training because I found out that if I didn't stay lean, strong, and healthy, I couldn't act, sing, and dance, which are the things that I love most to do in the world. So it is purpose-driven eating and purpose-driven training. So I'm not just eating for pleasure, I am eating for purpose. And it does look like I've got about equal amounts of the cauliflower and the sweet mini peppers here. And of course, these are not really sweet, it's just that they're not hot, right? Because they're like bell peppers. And so you're getting an idea of the quantity we have there. Pretty much this is the bottom half of a broiler pan, and just gonna make that full. If you want your vegetables a little bit crisper and more roasty and a little less steamed, you can use a cookie sheet instead. The flatter the sides are, the more roasted and the less moisture is going to be kept in. The cauliflower rice, though, I do a little bit like more of a moister, she said moist, a little bit more moist and a little bit less roasted, and so having a little rim on the pan works really well. So I suppose you could also use a baking dish if you wanted to. And where's my onion? Here it is. So as you can see, I've got about a half an onion here. Used the other half in another recipe, and now it's time for this half. And I'm just gonna slice it up. And, oh, I just realized, normally, I'm gonna go get them. Oh, here they are. My glasses. So one of the ways that I keep from crying when I'm slicing onion is I just put my glasses on. And if you don't wear glasses, you could, even if you've got a pair of sunglasses around the house, just go grab a pair. Now, of course, you have to be able to see to chop, so do be careful when you're chopping. And as you can see, it's chopped as opposed to diced. It all depends on what you prefer. If you like it finer, you can dice it. I'm just gonna chop it. So casual. I'm gonna shake it around. I gotta wait for it to cook anyway, so while it's cooking, that's when I'll be cleaning some things up. And I'm going to keep this and use it. As you can see, it's the stems and the leaves, and I can actually grate this on a box grater and turn it into a hash. So I'm gonna hold on to that. Try not to waste our good vegetables. Wow, especially if you're buying organic, you don't wanna waste a thing. Okay, so we've got the cauliflower and we've got the sweet bell pepper and the onion. Now comes the most important part, which is the seasoning. After you've made this dish a couple of times, you can go freehand, but I would recommend starting with a ½ teaspoon of these seasonings. You can go for a full teaspoon to make it even spicier, but I'm just gonna do this freehand. So here's the paprika. I'm just gonna shake it on until I kind of see the color, until the color comes up. Sometimes you have to tap it back down, shake it on some more. So there's the paprika. And the turmeric for color and flavor. Once again, it's that Spanish cauliflower, which is gonna have kind of a look a little bit of Spanish rice. And then the cumin, which is going to give it more of a Spanish-Mexican flavor. On with the cumin. I love, 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 love the aroma of this. And then finally, salt and pepper to taste. This is kosher salt, and I just pour kosher salt into a ramekin. Did you know that commercial salt, very often they add dextrose to it to make it flow more? What is dextrose? That's right, if it ends with an OSE, it's sugar. I really don't want sugar in my salt. So instead, I've just got a ramekin, and as you can see, I'm just liberally sprinkling it on. And then of course you can add pepper. I'll just go ahead and add the pepper later. So I've got the rimmed sheet here. That's what it looks like, seasoned. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shake it a little bit, shake it around. I'm gonna flick it around with my knife a little bit there. Mix it, mix it, mix it, just a bit. And shake it around a little bit more. And once again, continuing this kind of freehand style of cooking is my olive oil. That bottle's empty. I go through it. Not organic California olive oil. I do trust it. I'm from California, so that's the kind I'm using. And I'm gonna drizzle it on. And there you have it. That's what it looks like. That was really, really easy. I'm not a gifted cook or chef. I'm highly motivated in that I want to make food that is healthy and tasty and trigger-free for me so I can live the life I want to live. Oh, and of course there's the phone. So we're gonna go ahead and
Call from Dover Services. Call from Dover Services.
Facebook Live. We're gonna go ahead and wait. So I'm just gonna talk over it. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the oven while that goes. Usually these are hang-ups anyway. Let's find out. Yep, that's a hang-up. So we got to keep going. All right, so now it's in the oven. I'm gonna set it for 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes are done, I'm going to stir it around a little bit and cook it for about 5 minutes more. So now that you've seen the recipe, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about what I was reading this morning about sarcopenia, which is muscle loss. Here we are in the kitchen. And when my mom was 57 years old, just a couple years older than me, she had a fall in the kitchen My parents were visiting a beautiful place called Garden of the Gods, Kissing Camels in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and she was in an unusual kitchen. She turned, she slipped and fell, she broke her arm and she broke her hip. And from that point on, she was permanently disabled. She did get better, but she spent a great deal of time, she spent time in a wheelchair, she spent time on a walker, no fun to be on a walker in your late 50s, and then spent a lot of time on a cane. She did have a bone condition where she had brittle bones, osteopetrosis as opposed to osteoporosis. So when they went in to set her hip, and so if this is the ball and socket, I believe the break was here, they had to put a plate in, and they had an incredibly hard time drilling into her bone because her bone was like hard like marble. But unfortunately with bone, hard like marble is not necessarily a good thing because it was very difficult to heal, and so she had to deal with pain and slow healing for many years. And I looked at the way that she used to eat and the way that she used to train, and so many of the things that women were doing, and so this would have been back in the early 90s, so many things that women were doing to lose weight and stay healthy were not supporting healthy bones and not supporting healthy muscle or balance or the ability to catch yourself when you fall. I certainly don't want to be in a situation where we have an only child, and I think for anyone, especially someone getting 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond, you don't ever want to be a burden to anyone. My mother certainly wasn't. She was a delight, but there's this idea that you want to stay self-sufficient for as long as possible. One of the things that we are discovering is how important resistance training is toward those ends. It is the weightlifting. It is the progressive resistance training with good intensity that does actually, it's like the fountain of youth. And so what I want you to add to your sugar freedom lifestyle, you're pulling out the sugar, you're pulling out the grains, and one of the things I'd love you to put in its place would be a simple, effective program of progressive weightlifting. And probably the easiest thing you can do is just 6 lifts 3 times a week. And those lifts are going to be the squat, some kind of push-up, pushing motion, some kind of pulling or rowing motion, a deadlift, and then you can do a curl and then an extension. So for example, I would recommend do a weighted squat, dumbbell squats. You can use a single weight, goblet style, or use 2 weights, suitcase style, and you would do 8 reps, and you'd superset that with a push-up. And oh, look at this, I'm here on my counter. I'll show you a counter push-up. I'm gonna move the knife. So if you're a beginner, you're right here at your kitchen counter and you're fully extended, you're in plank position, and I like a push-up where the elbows are going straight back instead of out like this, so you're basically stacked. And you're just nice and easy, you're just gonna come down and then you're gonna push away from the counter and descend and push away from the counter. With perfect form, neutral spine, pull in your abs, descend, push it away from the counter, and 4, it's 5, and 6, and 7, and 8. I know this is silly, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Oh look, here's a little weight here, so I can like pretend this is my squat, right? I want to squat with my bottle of olive oil, try to keep my neck in line. 6, and 7, extend and squeeze, and 8. And of course, you're going to be wanting to challenge yourself with the weight, correct? And get right back, here's your push-ups, elbows straight back, tricep push-ups, and 1, and 2, it's 3, it's 4, here's 5, really squeeze those arms, 6, contract the arms, 7, don't make the elbows do the work, and 8. And then you would do 1 more set. So 3 supersets, 3 sets of 8. And then you can go into your next exercise, which would be a Romanian deadlift. So you'd be holding your weights. Oh, look, here's a flashlight and lipstick. Look, it's a flashlight and a lipstick. So pretend these are my weights, just got something to hold on to. Of course you'd be using weights. You wouldn't be using a flashlight and a lipstick, right? So here's a Romanian deadlift. So you're gonna skim the knees and then come up and squeeze everything. Skim and squeeze. And then a dumbbell row on each side. And you can lunge forward. If you don't have a bench, you can use your leg or the counter and then row it straight back. Training the arms, training the legs, and then switch sides. Row it straight back. So there's your fourth exercise. And then dumbbell curls. Nice, good extension, curl. And then you could do a double tricep extension. And there you have it. I mean, really, what could be simpler? 6 lifts, 8 reps, 3 sets, supersetting 3 times a week. But of course you would be doing that with a weight that's heavy enough to challenge you. One of the things in the study I was reading this morning is that the optimal intensity is working at 80% of your 1 rep max. Well, unless you're hiring a personal trainer like me and getting one-on-one time with them, how are you going to find out what your 1 rep max is? Well, guess what? This was so cool. What the study showed us is that 80% of 1 rep max, for most people who are not absolute beginners, that means if you're working at 80% of your 1 rep max and you're using good effort and intensity, you're going to be able to do between 8 and 15 repetitions. If you can do 25 repetitions, say you're doing, say this is a 10-pound dumbbell, right? And if it's me, I'm pretty strong, but not amazingly strong. If this is a 10-pound dumbbell, I can probably do 25 repetitions of that. So that means that this is lower than 80% of my 1 rep max. It's probably gonna be 60 or 65%, right? So my 1 rep maximum, what would my 1 rep maximum be with a dumbbell? Well, I know that I can do a 25-pound dumbbell for 10 reps with perfect form. So that's probably 80%. So maybe 35 is my 1 rep max? It's probably a little higher. I can probably row a 40-pound dumbbell. That's probably my 1 rep max. So, but I don't have to lift that heavy. I can use a 25-pound dumbbell and get an extraordinary training effect. It's just amazing how strong you can get after 50, 60, 70 and beyond with a really reasonable weight. As a matter of fact, this study, one of the studies that they looked at was dealing with people who were between 90 and 99 years old. And they were able to, in some exercises, improve their strength by what they called an astonishing 174%. I mean, isn't that just wonderful news? So there is more good news for you from the Sugar Freedom Kitchen. So once again, eat simply and man, get your hands on some iron. We're at about 1 minute and 16 seconds left on 10 minutes before the stir. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop it and stir it now. And get out of the hot pad and spatula. And there it is. Turn off that. Don't want to lose all the heat. Oh, I wish you could smell it. We don't have smell-o-vision, but it smells wonderful. And there it is. And I'm going to stir it around. You see how the sides are starting to brown a little bit? That's, oh, it smells so good. That's very nice. So the smaller pieces are going to get a little brown. Holding that for a long time, starting to get hot. So I'll stir it. Get the edges toward the inside. I made my protein sources earlier today. Last night, I made lamb chops. And this morning, I made some New York steaks. Yes, I do eat meat. So that's gonna go back in for 5 minutes, and then when it comes out, just gotta warm up my steak and I'm ready to eat. And then if my family wants to have this for dinner, they can add any kind of starch that they would like to add to round it out, or they can have this and a salad, and then they could have a sweet for dessert because they are not sugar addicts like me. One more thing I want to mention before I go today is the concept of out of sight, out of mind. I'm reading a book right now on addiction and procrastination. Important information. One of the most important ways that we can motivate ourselves to break through from the subconscious pleasure motivation that often takes us down the garden path to doing activities that we would prefer not to do. One of the ways that we can manage those impulses is by managing our environment. And so that means that the foods that might be tempting and might be trigger foods for you, you want to make sure that they are packaged and put away, out of sight, out of mind. I want to leave you today with something that happened to me 2 days ago. I was doing a show, Mad Breakfast, and it went really well. I had so much fun. But we closed on a Sunday matinee and then packed everything up. We had strike after that, so we're putting away the food and the props and the costumes. And I had been so busy getting ready to go to the theater that I had only eaten breakfast. I didn't eat lunch. This is, of course, the year of living honestly, so I do some intermittent fasting, and I do find that eating twice a day works best for me. Because of my food addiction nature, when I eat, I kind of call it taking the tiger by the tail. So I'd rather get nourished and satisfied within 2 meals rather than 3 or 4 or even 6, which is what some bodybuilders do. So I had eaten breakfast, but then shame on me, I got too busy and I did not eat lunch. And by the time we did the show, and by the time I got home, it was 3 o'clock and then 4 o'clock, and I was getting very, very hungry. There was food in the show, muffins and cake and all kinds of interesting foods. And I had brought home a really, really big slice of chocolate cake for either my son or my husband. And I don't know what it was, but it was there and it was on the counter and I could see it. And this part of me, the subconscious pleasure-seeking part of me just wanted that cake, and willpower was nothing against it. And instead of eating some delicious Spanish cauliflower and a steak, I ate the cake, and oh, I paid the price. That night, I had the worst leg cramps of my life. At 53, one of the things I noticed is that now when I drink alcohol or eat sugar, I get leg cramps, and they're an absolute nightmare. I got up and I sprayed on magnesium oil everywhere that my legs were cramping. And first it started on the left side of my body, and I walked that off and I got back in bed, and then it happened on the right-hand side of my body. And I just remember literally trying to pray the pain away, because I had used the magnesium oil and that was helping. And what I found is the only thing that really helped is I drank a significant amount of water, and then just walking around the house, walking it off did seem to help. And then I finally got some relief and I got to sleep. But I'm so grateful that that happened to me, because I don't think that I have ever had such a profound cause and effect experience in my life of what happens to me when I eat sugar and grains and gluten and probably trans fats all mixed in together, in this understanding that the pain was so bad that it simply wasn't worth it. Now, certainly I don't wish that on you. I mean, if you want to have the occasional piece of cake, I certainly don't want you to suffer with leg cramps the way I did. However, if you do suffer with them, you may want to attempt seeing what happens if you pull the sugar and the gluten and the grains out of your nutrition strategy and see if that helps. So that's what I have for you today. Spanish cauliflower, half a head of cauliflower, probably about 6 mini peppers, half of an onion, and then cumin, garlic powder, and paprika, and I also use turmeric and salt. Chop it up, mix it up, roast it 10 minutes, stir it, roast it 5 minutes more, and you have a delicious side dish. Or you could do some things to it vegetarian-wise with maybe some nuts or cheese to make it a main dish. And there goes one of my favorite, easiest dishes for you. And there it is. It's like all done. Let me get it out of the oven. All done and ready to eat. all in, woo! All in the time that you and I have been talking today. So there it is, very delicious. I'm gonna enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it. I do have one more thing to tell you before we go. I know that everything up to this is evergreen, but we are doing another Freedom Body Challenge where we're going to get off of sugar and grains, and we're going to lift weights, and we're going to do that for 4 weeks starting on March the 20th. And we're going to go ahead and finish it. It really finishes April 17th. That would be 4 weeks, but we'll let people get their pictures in, yes, until April 20th. So Catherine@sugarfreedom.com. Email me, Catherine@sugarfreedom.com, if you want information about the challenge. If you want to join us, it is $50 to join, and that will get you your Sugar Freedom suggested menus, and it'll get you all the training. Support, you can have a support phone call with me from that $50, and there's also a prize. The top 2 finishers will each get $125. Prizes, cash prizes, are actually truly excellent motivators, because I am studying the psychology of motivation and finding different ways to motivate the mind and body to do the things that are healthy so that you can live the life that you want. So there are going to be those 2 prizes. In order to be eligible for the prize, you need to measure your waistline, probably also the hip, because I do like to keep track of waist to hip measure. My favorite measurement is the waistline. We can talk about the science on that on another podcast, but we're going to measure the waistline and then also do a before picture. So preferably, and you don't have to do the before picture in a swimsuit or anything like that, just you can do capris or yoga pants, and then probably some kind of tank top so that we can see, and then do the before and the after picture from the front is fine. And then everyone who emails me and gets in the group, Catherine@sugarfreedom.com, we will be voting among the groups. So the voting won't go to the public. It won't be, put out on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. It'll just be the people in the email group that will vote among each other. I am still doing a Facebook group. I don't know about you, I'm having a little bit of difficulty with Facebook, getting on it a little bit too long, starting to feel some negative feelings about myself from getting on Facebook. I think one of the problems with Facebook is kind of making comparisons, and I do feel like it does affect me. So I'm not quite sure. We'll probably do a Facebook group on this one again, but after this, I am working on a membership website, aren't we all? These things take time. But definitely you can just do this through email, and we can just have the group that is entered. Those are the only ones who will be voting. Make sense? Trust me, I've done this before. It works fantastic. We get great results, and it's not as complex as it sounds. Email me, Catherine@sugarfreedom.com. Thank you, everybody, and it's time for me to eat some of this delicious, nutritious, and satisfying food. Bye-bye.